Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I have with me Vice Admiral Anup Singh, someone I recently heard in a conference talking about securing Bay of Bengal, and I said, "Yeah, this is a conversation. ये तो अपने channel पे होनी पड़ेगी," because this was an eye-opening presentation that sir had given. And as a matter of fact, हमको सबको पता ही है, Bay of Bengal is going to be quite an interesting place to be, especially currently looking at what has happened in Bangladesh. So, sir, namaskar. Thank you so much for coming in. Always a pleasure to have you and listen and learn from you.
Thank you so much, Aadi.
Sir, let's get your naval opinion on what happened in Bangladesh. How does it kind of impact Indian naval security, Indian maritime security in this particular region? We've talked about geopolitical aspects, we've talked about religious aspects, we talked about a lot of aspects on this channel. But I guess the naval part is something that we need to do. So, how do you look at what has happened in Bangladesh in a purely maritime naval aspect, naval outlook, sir?
You see, the immediate effect, which will be adversarial in the least, even for the beyond the maritime boundaries of Bangladesh, will be when the quiet settles a little more. You will find more and more Chinese coming in, irrespective of the dispensation that is in power. As you know, the Chinese have had a very wide sway over Bangladesh, despite the fact that Sheikh Hasina was in power, who was very friendly towards India. But then money makes the mayor go, and nations have a habit of extending begging hand to wherever the mullah can come in from, not realizing what happened in Hambantota, not realizing what we people in conferences, track 2s have been saying and track 1.5 have been warning. Because they just want their time to pass with good tidings, at least on the surface. Now you see the amount of money that has been spent by the Chinese in the Sheikh Hasina naval base, which was primarily meant for the two Ming-class submarines which were acquired by Bangladesh in 2016 or 17. But it has expanded to even include some ships. Now, as soon as the contract negotiations had started, I remember in one of the conferences in 2015 or 16, I had mentioned that the Chinese will not give the new Yuan class submarines. They'll deliberately give upgraded versions of the Ming class or refurbished versions of in-service Ming class, and that's exactly what has happened. Even though they call them the Ming 35 Bravo, which was the latest of the Ming class, it is still almost 30 years old by design and in terms of hull strength, etc. So initial reports said that these submarines will go up to 2030. Now that's not too far away. And the life of a ship or a submarine, in our case, we have sailed the Foxtrot class submarines between 30 and 37 years. Even the Russians were surprised because, we can't afford to buy new things off the shelf in any case. Off the shelf things don't suit us in our tropical climate. So in the name of and what I had said in that conference was that you watch, the Chinese are playing a very, very smart game. And the Bangladeshis are quite happy, knowing fully well what will happen. They are going to give submarines which are just about upgraded from vintage submarines. And thereafter say that to train your people as good as gratis, and to maintain these submarines till you can take over independently, we will create infrastructure. And only Chinese infrastructure can serve Chinese submarines, including, charging of batteries ashore, servicing of batteries ashore. This requires a lot of specialized infrastructure. Each of those batteries weigh almost a ton. And in the first Foxtrot, there used to be 480 batteries. In the kilo class, there are about 200 odd batteries. Now, Ming is an upgrade of the Romeo class submarines of the Soviet era, of the Soviet immediately post Second World War. So they would also have those monstrous in size and weight batteries. Now, all these things and the fact that there is nothing that has been made in Bangladesh. nor have they had access to specialized equipment which are meant only for submarines. The Bangladesh Navy and the Bangladesh industry cannot put its hands on those items till they become self-sufficient, self-reliant in, if not manufacturing it, at least looking after themselves. So the Chinese are here to stay. At the moment, because of the turmoil, they might have been asked by their government to go back, some of them. Others would remain under the protection of the Bangladesh. Now, that is not the only project. There are more in the pipeline insofar as defense is concerned. And most importantly, the civil infrastructure, which was already built by the Chinese, including the Chattogang Tunnel, the Paira naval the Paira shipping port or whatever, some container terminal here, a refurbished project in Chittagong port, which was one of the first with the Chinese having done so. All these were initially built to be worth about double digit in billions of dollars. By now, I'm sure they have reached about $7 or $8 billion. I mean, look at Sheikh Hasina base itself. That was supposed to be worth $1.5 billion. It's no mean pocket for anyone within the developing world to be able to afford. Now, all this will be so-called soft loans. And by the way, I saw a report a couple of months ago which said a Pew survey, as you know, Pew does a lot of reliable surveys across the world for various things, including for nuclear technology and so on and so forth, had found even in the year 2015 and 16, when they did the survey, that more than 50% of the population that was surveyed voted favorably for China being a development partner of Bangladesh.
Right.
So you can see the effect. I mean, when you went to Sri Lanka in the years 2009, 10, 11, 12, the story was the same. And what happened when Sri Lanka was in crisis 3 years ago? Who came to the rescue?
Chinese dropped them like a hot potato and ran away.
Not a skin of a peanut. They just kept quiet. Who came to the rescue? India. Could India have afforded $3.8 billion for itself in such a short span? Why did it help a neighbor? Because neighborhood first. And before that, the fact that we've been trying to tell Sri Lankans since their independence, look, 21 miles away makes a lot of geostrategic strength.
And you can't defeat geography.
5,000 miles away makes no sense.
Yep.
But 5,000 miles away does not mean more time for transferring funds. And the Chinese have lots and lots and lots of funds.
Yeah.
6.5 times the amount that India can afford anywhere in terms of GDP. So, people don't realize. And we've been saying from before the time that Bangladesh started on this spree. So that is the first thing that I would like to say will be an aftermath of the turmoil. But the other thing that is going wrong, as you've heard, despite being one of the fastest growing economies apart from India, the Bangladeshis are doing pretty well insofar as garment trade, export of garments, despite Europeans and some other countries having put a stop to in the name of use of child labor, human rights, and so on in garment industries. Everything is in a shambles now.
Yep.
As of today, we have completed only 1 month since the turmoil began when Sheikh Hasina had to leave the country. The real turmoil began almost a month before that, as you know. But
July.
but it was building up. But after the 5th of August, there was nothing called governance. And I doubt if there's anything called governance in terms of focusing back on economic progress and focusing on how to keep good international relations and good relations with all those agreements or pacts that they had with various countries, whether in the immediate neighborhood or across 10,000 miles. They haven't got their act together because this is you know a combination of people from amongst the students from across the entire spectrum that was disinclined to believe that the Awami League was doing good for them and for Bangladesh. And unfortunately, those organizations which are known in the world to be a little not much more than a little jihadist, they have been allowed a free run now. Now, this is going to have a very serious adverse effect on not only Bangladesh, but on its neighborhood, even across the waters. Because policies will be influenced by these people till such time proper elections take place.
See, the
I
problem
would
with
say
Bangladesh.
that, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
please go on. Please go on. Please go on.
I would say that even if one never wishes in any country a military coup, nor a soft military takeover. But I would say even if the military in that country had taken over because it has had one episode earlier, things would have been a little better. At the moment, you cannot just foresee anything in the near and mid-term, which will
That's
be
America for you.
beneficial to that.
That's
Look at
America for you.
the
They don't care when they throw out a government. They don't care what happens after that. They just want the government out.
absolutely.
So that's America for you. So that's like the modus operandi section one. Don't care what happens after that. So, but
One is only
the way of
waiting. One is only
sure.
waiting with bated breath for the IMF to give the first warning. Let's see.
I think IMF is going to give them money, sir. The
Yeah,
Americans are going to say, "Yeah,
because
they
if they
don't."
can give it to the Pakistanis who are really in the dumps for the last so many years, Bangladesh has to be lifted up.
Yeah, yeah. So, but the problem I kind of foresee is that Bangladesh is going to be left in a place where people are going to be worried before they start dealing with this country because of the Islamism, as you've kind of the radicalization element which you can see on the ground, and they're kind of releasing all sorts of teda-meda characters. Having said that, sir, when you look at the Bay of Bengal, it is still the domain of India. There is no way that any other power can come inside and try and create a little bit of a this thing because we dominate this region completely.
Yes.
What would we need to do to keep that domination alive, knowing very well that greater powers are wanting to have a foothold in Bangladesh? Now, may I just take a moment to explain why am I saying this? Is because if you look at the map of the military bases of America, the Lilliputs, as they call it, these small little bases that they've got all over the place,
Yeah.
they wanted a Lilliput in, let's say, St. Martin Island. And the Indian Ocean is the only region where they don't have Lilliputs, right? Except for Diego Garcia. They don't have anything in the depth of the Indian Ocean towards, closer to India. Um, how do we kind of play with this game, sir? Because at the end of it, we need to keep our security, we need to keep our domination in this area. How do we play this game?
You see, India has had, having been amongst the uh, three leading nations which proposed the non-aligned movement,
Hmm.
India has had a policy of no alliance, no coalition. And therefore, there is no doubt in anyone's mind. We have said it very recently also by this government, by the previous government, by the previous government that, sorry, we will not fall into any coalition unless it is any alliance or uh, a military advance in any third country as proposed by one country, unless it has the sanctity and sanction of the UN as a peacekeeping force. So one example, in Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, the United States in 2003, under George W. Bush, the junior, there was a delegation which came and sought India's entry into the coalition forces for
Afghanistan.
fighting of weapons of mass destruction and this, that, and the other in the second Gulf War. And it is all credit to the then Prime Minister who said sorry. Even though majority of the people in the politics of that day felt that we will not be able to say sorry. He was very straight. Much later, in 2010, in 2008, I had gone with the defense minister to the United States. The defense minister had taken one each senior representative from one each service, and the defense secretary was also there. And the United States very softly sought his opinion to say, can you not join forces to bring in peace, with the ultimate aim of bringing in peace and normalcy and some sense of governance in Afghanistan? And the defense minister said, sorry, no boots on the ground. Now, I would have opined at that time that if at all there was a at that time, I'm saying, not now, if at all there was a proposal, all right, if not military uniform, how about police forces to train their police? We should say yes, so that we do not do constabulary vocation in that country to harm people, but to take them along. Not like police is known in police states, in closed states. But today my view has changed, that thank God that they didn't offer, and thank God that we didn't say yes on our own. So that has been our policy. Now, when it comes to, what should we be doing in the Bay of Bengal? Strictly speaking, our activity, not only from the Navy, but from the diplomatic service, the diplomatic establishment at Delhi, our own mission in Bangladesh, and all other organizations which have had any kind of exchange, including think tanks, with their think tanks, should actually be stepping up from a trot to a gallop, but very smoothly transitioning in order to carry people along. After all, it is not the elite thinkers in Bangladesh who had the same view as those on the streets. Even though I do know that the younger lot who were not born when Bangladesh was born, they have had a different view of India. They have been extremely aggressive, but this event has really shaken them. Because of last time this kind of a thing happened was in 1975. This time they've really been shaken up because they are the educated lot. They understand the rest of the world. They understand what is meant by development and progress. And they know that this is going to set them back by not 1 year, but many years, unless they can quickly get their act together, do proper democratic process, make sure that the jihadists are kept out. They don't have to be put in prison. Now I know nobody will put them in prison, but they have to be kept out.
Yeah, you're right.
They are at the center of the circle at the moment, insofar as administration is concerned and a say is concerned. So we will have to step up from all our establishments, our initiatives, our efforts.
So in the
certainly in the Bay of Bengal, our own patrolling will have to go up, because as I said, the Chinese were already there. Now they will start telling these guys, all right, we need to sail a little more frequently, and we will accompany you on the submarines and even on, if there are some patrol craft which are likely to come from there, they will say, we will train you at sea. These are things which are not going to work even in Bangladesh's favor.
will you think that do you think that the Americans agree to something like that, sir? Because the Americans are the half the reason why the Bangladeshis got thrown in the junk is because there was too much involvement of China in the entire game, and we see that in many countries today where China footprint is higher, the regime kind of flips, and
No,
that's exactly what has happened here as well.
no, I did not get the question correct. Did you
I'm saying,
mean
sir,
that when the
do you think the
US agreed
Americans?
to what?
So see, this whole structure in the government is basically pro-American. There's that very pro-American setup. We are also sitting there at the end of it, to kind of counter what this game would be. Do you think going forward that the Chinese would want to foray into this, because considering that they've not been able to actually achieve certain number of their aims, certain, of course, we can give it to them, but certain number of their aims with Sri Lanka, Maldives, do you think the Chinese would want to open up another setup with Bangladesh, knowing very well that the Americans sit in the helm of this country today?
At the moment, the Chinese have the upper hand insofar as these projects are concerned and their presence is
Mm.
concerned. The US or anybody else will not have a say. Secondly, if the US had such a lot of control, then they wouldn't have allowed the some of the uneducated, the I should not use the word uncivilized, but the inexperienced lot to be included in the administration, as they call it.
I don't know, sir.
Or
Somewhere
whatever
down the line,
governing
I think
council.
I think the US loves these jihadis for some reason, and we've seen that all around the world. They love to have these
But
jihadis with them because they kind of serve a certain purpose for the US of, I don't know what it is. But sir, let's look at it a little more maritime, sort of a based. Prime Minister Modi currently is in Singapore. He's gone to Brunei. He's gone to Singapore. He's done visits with Vietnam. He's done visits with Malaysia. There's a huge push from India towards the Act East maritime domain. We're also looking at probably investments in the port in Brunei. We are talking about an additional port that Adani is taken in Vietnam as well. So there is a lot of move from our side to shift our focus in towards the South China Sea region as well. Although not militarily overtly, but there is a lot of focus of putting up an India flag in those countries as well, as far as port investments and this and that is concerned. I'm also aware that the Act East policy is a port development led policy. How do you see the progress of something like that going forward, sir, and how important will it be for us to actually focus on this particular aspect, considering Bangladesh is a big issue today?
yeah, I think these are just the right moves and at the right time. Strictly speaking, the right time was almost about 15 years ago, but our economy wouldn't have allowed that. Also, the situation in the Pacific and our relations with America were not as warm as they are today. Doing what we are by doing what we are doing currently, um, if we are able to get China its goat, so much better for us and for the world and for America. If China gets tickled and annoyed, what uh, we should be turning around and telling them, what business do you have to come into the Indian Ocean? You've been making forays since ages, but particularly since 2008. These are not your waters. Keep out, because we know your final agenda. We know the activity for which you are coming over here, collecting intelligence and preparing for finally settling down in an enclave in Gwadar.
Yeah.
They already have Hambantota. They already have part rights, unnotified, unagreed rights to get into Colombo's new port and to get into Colombo city. In any case, I don't think they will ever be able to service those EMIs at the rate at which China has been seeking. So one only hopes South Colombo port, where the first terminal for container terminal was made by China with 85% financing, does not go the way Hambantota has gone. Similarly, the South Colombo city, where most of the funding and reclamation activity has been by China. So if we are able to get what we deserved to get many, many decades ago. And that is only because of some strength in our economy over the last 20, 30 years. Then it is only right to get into these countries where no prime minister, no leader of the country had visited, like Brunei.
Yeah, yeah.
Singapore, you know, I happened to visit Brunei in 2016. I must tell you, mighty impressed. I was invited by their staff college to give a talk, and mighty impressed by the system in that country. And I also came to know, by the way, that there are out of a population of, I think at that time, 500,000, if I'm not mistaken, there were some 90,000 ethnic or otherwise my immigrant Chinese. They were not allowed citizenship. That's the Sultan of Brunei.
Yeah, he doesn't like
Everybody
it.
else cows down. Everybody else cows down. He would give it to any other nationality, not the Chinese.
Yeah, yeah. He's given it to
So,
Indians, by the way.
yes, that is why I'm saying every other, and Indians, they have a lot of love for us, and therefore it is only right now to start aggressively advancing our initiatives in these countries to say that there is need, the waters remove distances over the water, in the sense that India is as much a neighbor of America, as much a neighbor of Japan as it is of Bangladesh.
True.
Because the waters connect. Why? Because sea lines of communication serve India, the United States, the Republic of Nauru, Cook Island in the Pacific as much as it does to these countries like Brunei and anybody else. So the earlier people start realizing these things and start taking initiatives to get these countries closer to us and our agenda is that of peace and stability, nothing more. And, the free and open Indo-Pacific proposed by Shinzo Abe and thereafter fully encouraged by the United States, except in Trump's time, is the initiative which has a lot of backing from us, from India.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is the way to get the free and open Indo-Pacific.
Indeed, sir. I was
interact with these countries, to also interact with the island states in the Pacific Forum, who
PIC.
are coming under a lot of pressure from the Chinese to succumb, and many of them have.
So, what do you think this policy is, sir? When we talk about the Act East policy, is this a counter to the Chinese influence within the Indian Ocean closer to India? Because you're saying, okay, fine, since you're coming to my waters, I'm going to come to yours.
Not really.
What is this?
This was only a promotion of the Look East policy.
Basically,
because we always thought at that time, when Look East policy was brought in by the UPA regime, I think the first UPA regime, or even before that. In fact, the first architect of, without calling it the Look East policy, the first architect of this initiative was Narasimha Rao, who started making visits to some East Asian, to Southeast Asian countries, and started doing a little more than just MOUs with these countries in all fields, wherever we could afford. Now, one other reason why we called it the Look East policy and thereafter the Act East to have a promotion to the policy was that, right in the beginning, we felt that we've always been focusing towards the West. West meaning the Persian Gulf more than the Mediterranean and the Atlantic.
Mediterranean, yeah.
Why? Because we needed oil. Till the 1970s, the early 1970s, we were unable to explore and exploit oil. And in any case, today, that is September of 2024, we are able to exploit on the west and the east coast offshore, as well as in the hinterland, only 11.7% of our total demand of crude and gas. So you can imagine, and that's why I keep saying that, the the drain on our GDP is the impex burden of import of crude oil and gas.
Sir.
So we used to only focus towards the West, and West meant trade and technology input, if possible, from Europe and America, and particularly petroleum products from crude oil from the Persian Gulf. So keep our relations with them very warm. We completely, forgot about our ancient bonds with the
Cultural
East
ties with the
Asian
South.
countries and Southeast Asia. That is why look East, and there is so much to do insofar as trade and technology exchange is concerned, particularly inputs into India. Now look at what is done. After all, it is chips agreement with Singapore today. Before that, with
Malaysia.
with the leader insofar as semiconductors are concerned, Taiwan. So
Malaysia,
that's the way
whole
to
lot of
go.
stuff.
That is Act East. Look East followed by Act East. Nothing else.
When we look at the maritime scenario today, sir, I mean, we also have a situation where the Japanese are interested in actually doing their repairs and stuff like that with us. We are in the process of negotiating a FNOPS with the Russians as well, where they'll be able to use our bases, we'll be able to use theirs. How do you think the role of the Indian Navy is going to expand, and what do we need going forward in the future? We, knowing the factor that we are looking at some more, high technology vessels coming into the Indian Navy. There's some stuff which has been cleared for maritime purposes yesterday, some Dorniers and air defense radars and this and that has been cleared. We've also got recent news of anti-submarine buoys that are coming in from America. So there's a whole lot which is happening in this domain. What do you think we should focus on going forward, sir? And of course, the Arigat. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. The first thing I would say, Aadi, is that we need more budget.
Sir.
And we need
Always.
the system to change to be able to absorb capital budget in the year. If not, because the process is a long drawn process of some 36 months in the defense procurement procedure. Capital budget lapses on 31st March each year. Then the
This year
procedure for defense,
they've done it
now
accrual, sir.
they're roll on. The roll on business has to become absolutely free flow.
Yep.
You cannot have restrictions, only those where committed liabilities have been ongoing till 30th March. You have to have a steady roll on. But more than that, it is not enough to say, and unfortunately, I've been saying this year after year while in service, because I used to be Director Naval Plans looking after the budget as well in the late 90s, that it is not enough to say that the largest allocation of government expenditure has been committed to the defense ministry. It has to be like that. Look at our land borders, 15,000 kilometers, which include mountainous terrain, at which even the Americans, when they go for forward area tour, they have their mouths gaping when they are taken up from the staff college into let's say towards Nathula, etc., to say this kind of terrain, and your guys fight at 15,000 and above. Now look at our peninsula, 5,000 kilometers on mainland, another 2,500 kilometers amongst the island territories. You require a lot of infrastructure and platforms in all three services. So if the first plan paper made in 1946 during the RIN days, and by the way, it was thanks to our ancestors, Indian ancestors in the white uniform, who were part of the RIN, who screamed saying, we are very close to getting independence. We better start planning now itself, to the British masters. And therefore, we will need not one but more aircraft carriers, but more than that, because of our peninsular nature and because of the choke points and because of the massive area of the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea combined. But we also need numbers.
Yeah.
And can you imagine that paper said 142 platforms? We haven't breached that figure till today. Much later than 46. In 1963, the Emergency Committee of the Cabinet which was appointed as soon as the 62 debacle ended by the Prime Minister and his cabinet, within the parliament, submitted a paper which is to this day classified, and for good reason classified, because there are certain things which should not be made public. But one item from there, in the conclusion and recommendations, has become public knowledge for the last 20, 30 years, which said the same figure of 142 platforms for the Navy. It said 800,000 boots on ground. We have exceeded that figure because of internal security commitments, and yet we are falling short. And 42 fighter squadrons. We are short by 10 squadrons in the Air Force. And we in the Navy have never been able to breach that figure of 142, except momentarily 2-3 years ago. Because the rate of attrition of legacy platforms brought in from the Soviet Union or made in-house is much higher than the rate of accretion. Because naval platforms take a long time to build. 10 years from approval of design, not the gestation period is 10 years from approval of design, cutting of the first steel plate till commission. So we need much more allocation. I mean, I am one person who is totally uneducated insofar as percentage of GDP that is touted across the world, starting from CPRI in the Scandinavian peninsula. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute book, which comes out every year. It's like saying that Japan spends only 1% of GDP. Well, Japan's economy and 1% of GDP for a self-defense force after the Second World War with a pacifist constitution is a hell of a lot. So I am not one who says, no, we must come to 3% of GDP. Sorry. I am saying what is required and what is affordable by our economy must be given because of need to have, not desire to have, and not nice to have. That has not come over the last 75 years. That is the reason we are lagging behind. That is the reason during exercises, when you get brand new, so-called, as the West calls them, toys, they start losing their total life. The operational cycles start getting compressed when you do exercises, when new inductions take place. So we need, we need to start saying, all right, let us do a plan with not just people sitting in the ministry and even people sitting within the armed forces, but bring in people from outside who have time and have had some experience in some field or the other, including economists, including planners, who are not hamstrung by this idea of, defense is a burden. Well, there is an old adage that defense and security on one side and economy on the other are actual handmaidens. One cannot survive without the other. If you want your economy to progress just because you are a master lord, you need to spend more on defense to protect your territorial integrity, your sovereignty, not only of your land, of your country, of your landmass, but also of having a say in international forum.
Absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. On that note, sir, that is a very, very strong and encouraging note. Thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure listening to you. Let me assure you, my viewers, and including myself, why am I saying only viewers? I learned a lot, and I'm more bothered about my country and where we are headed as a nation. And thank you so much for actually helping us understand what the geopolitical scenario is and what we need to kind of do in the future. I hope we achieve our aims, and I hope I get to talk to you more often in coming forward as well, sir. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Jai Hind, and thank you, Aadi. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.